محافظة بورسعيد وتحديدا في منطقة شرق التفريعة. هذه المنطقة التي من المفترض
This area that is supposed to witness today a number of very important inaugurations in the field of aquaculture, as well as other events that would be inaugurated over video conference. Today we are witnessing the inauguration of El Fairuz for aquaculture in Sharq al-Tafri'a, as well as other inaugurations in the field of mineral wealth. These projects that were adopted by the state to narrow the gap between the supply and demand, as well as providing a cheaper alternative to protein, especially meat protein. These projects, Raghda and dear viewers, are part of the strategic, comprehensive vision of the state of modern Egypt. This strategic vision tries to create job opportunities as well as investment opportunities, and is trying, in addition to that, to achieve comprehensive food security for all Egyptians through such projects and others. This project, in fact, is an integrated project that has 5,900 aquaculture tanks for marine and other fishes. The total surface area is 15,000 feet-downs of land for this aquaculture, in addition to 2 lakes for free fishing. The area of the 2 lakes, as we were told, is 10,000 feet-downs. And there are also a group of other constructions and other components in this project. There is an ice factory, there is a processing plant, and there are also warehouses for the fodders that would be used in aquaculture. These inaugurations also through the video conference would cover the aquaculture in Diba Gharb, West Port Said, in addition to the productive complex in Nubaria and El Fayoum, and the dairy complex in El Fayoum, in addition to a plant for marble and granite in Ras Sedr and another plant in El Ain Al-Sukhna. These projects that are to be inaugurated today are affiliate to the National Service Authority for the Armed Forces. We asked about the job opportunities provided by such projects, and we were told that they have provided thousands of job opportunities, and that we have precedences in such projects that prove that they assimilate and create thousands of direct and indirect job opportunities based on the products of such types of projects. Another very important point we were told while we are here on the ground in Port Said is that these projects are managed according to the most modern specialized systems. Yes, the political leadership has given clear directives for aquaculture in general, that they should implement the most modern technologies and techniques with the foreign expertise, and this means sharing expertise as well as training the Egyptian staff and workers, in addition to benefiting from the studies and researches that would implement the advanced technology as well as the standards of environmental safety and also public health, to integrate with other existing projects that are producing and are lucrative. There has always been a lot of projects for aquaculture in the private sector and in authorities affiliate to the state of Egypt, but in few years we have started getting into the era of mega projects or gigantic ones. The Egyptian precedents in these projects lie in Ghalioun Lake, and this is an honorable project, and it's also worth noting that this project that would be inaugurated today is double folds the production capability and the surface area of Ghalioun project. Yes, the aquaculture has developed in Egypt, and this sector has developed further. A number of projects that started, and they can be considered as mega ones, to raise the level of food security, be it through providing products and commodities in the local market and achieving self-sufficiency in addition to exporting the surplus. Statistics have always said that the percentage for protein from fish that is received by the Egyptian citizen is small in comparison to the areas in Egypt, like the seas and the lakes. And these current projects are trying to narrow this gap and deal with this imbalance of the provision of fish protein for the Egyptians. And here we need to talk also about the quality of this fish protein that is provided for the Egyptians. Today we are witnessing a new accomplishment that is Egyptian fully.
شمروا قوام قوام ابني في تاريخ كبير جديد تاريخ يعيد أمجاد زمان افتح بيبان وازرع بإيدك ازرعه كله من جهد إيدك هتبني تعلي بلدك شمروا قوم آن الأوان قوم يا مصري تاريخ يعيد أمجاد زمان افتح بيبان وازرع بإيدك ازرعه كله من جهد إيدك هتبني تعلي بلدك شمر وقوم آن الأوان قوم يا مصري ابني ليك لابنك ولابني مستقبلنا في ايدينا والرزق بينادينا والخير قصادنا هو ماليها في كل شبر في مصر
قالوا لي ارسم علمها، سرحت وتخيلت قصر عليه حراس كتيرة، في وسطهم خط ونسر. تحيا مصر تحيا، وعيونها تملي صاحية، وعيونها في كل ناحية وفي مليون اتجاه. تحيا مصر حرة، تحيا ألف مرة، تحيا مهما يجرى لنهاية الحياة. عروسة لابسة طرحة جاية لينا من بعيد، وحاسبة كل خطوة عارفة هي رايحة فين، بتبتسم بفرحة للقريب وللبعيد، وبتشاور لبكرة ادخلوها آمنين. تحيا مصر تحيا، وعيونها تملي صاحية، وعيونها في كل ناحية وفي مليون اتجاه. تحيا مصر حرة، تحيا ألف مرة، تحيا مهما يجرى لنهاية الحياة. تحيا مصر تحيا، وعيونها تملي صاحية، وعيونها في كل ناحية وفي مليون اتجاه. تحيا مصر حرة، تحيا ألف مرة، تحيا مهما يجرى لنهاية الحياة. تحيا مصر تحيا، وعيونها تملي صاحية، وعيونها في كل ناحية وفي مليون اتجاه. تحيا مصر حرة، تحيا ألف مرة، تحيا مهما يجرى لنهاية الحياة.
مصر بجد اللي ما شافهاش يبقى حياته لسه ما عاشهاش. مصر الحارة كان العبارة قضية سلم طول الليل. مصر الشاب الجدع الشاب بنت بترسم قلب وسم. مصر الزحمة مليانة رحمة، ايد بتعدي وايد بتشيل.
وكوباية شاي عالرايق تفوقك لو متضايق،
ونكتة تضحكك من القلب.
وحمص الشام عالكورنيش، وخد طبق فول ورغيف عيش.
وقعد وغمس هنا على جنب، راضي نعيش فيها عالقد. وهي دي مصر اللي
السيد الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي
Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of the Republic and the highest commander of the armed forces.
السلام عليكم.
Peace be upon you.
تفضلوا استريحوا.
Would you please be seated? Many happy returns.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, Your Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of the Republic and the highest commander of the armed forces, distinguished guests. Egypt is walking down the path of hope and drawing the path for the next generations. Day after the other, the scene is changing. Achievements are accomplishment, and the engine of development is moving from one stop to the next. The political leadership has put the development projects as a top priority. due to its positive return on reducing the burden shouldered by the citizen, as well as providing the suitable high-quality food for Egyptians. Today we are witnessing the inauguration of a number of development ambitious programs and projects in the field of aquaculture, as well as animal and dairy production complexes and marble and granite plants. These projects are contributing to meeting the needs of the local market as well as exporting the surplus abroad. The best thing to start this event with is reciting verses from the Holy Quran, and the reciter is Sheikh Sharif Sayyid Khalil.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وهو الذي سخر البحر لتأكلوا منه لحما طريا وتستخرجوا منه حلية تلبسونها وترى الفلك مواخر فيه ولتبتغوا من فضله ولعلكم تشكرون وألقى في الأرض رواسي أن تميد بكم وأنهارا وسبلا لعلكم تهتدون صدق الله العظيم.
صدق الله العظيم. السيد الرئيس.
Your Excellency, the President, distinguished guests, developing all components of infrastructure, be it water, electricity, wastewater, lining, lakes, projects for roads and housing units, in addition to the service aspect that would cover health, education, social safety networks and programs. These are all the objectives to be implemented by the government in the timeline according to the directives of the President within the framework of the National Project for Developing Egyptian Rural Villages nationwide, within the project of Decent Life in its first phase. The speech of Dr. Mustafa Bedbouli, the Prime Minister of Egypt. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, Your Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of the Republic, ladies and gentlemen, let me at the outset express my happiness as an Egyptian citizen to start the inaugurations of this new year 2021 from the beloved land of Sinai through the mega project for aquaculture. And it is an opportunity for us as the government to launch from this place another very important national project under the auspices of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and it is the national project for developing the Egyptian villages within the framework of the Decent Life initiative. These national mega projects implemented by the state of Egypt does not come as a coincidence. But in these national projects, We followed the same methodological scientific path that was followed by other developing countries that has similar conditions like Egypt, and over the previous 4 decades has achieved great developmental strides, like countries in East Asia. When these countries started, they started with a comprehensive vision for the development, and they translated it on maps and on the ground through a strategic plan, and this strategic plan is to be implemented through a number of mega national projects. This is what we as Egypt has started through putting Egypt's Vision 2030. Once the president assumed power mid-2014, we developed this vision that has certain targets. We were targeting equality life for all Egyptians in rural and urban areas, as well as achieving equality in rural and urban areas. The rural areas has always suffered from different difficulties. The next objective was a strong economy, a competitive, diversified economy based on automation and digitization, and that Egypt by the year 2030 would assume its position between the biggest 30 countries all over the world, and that all our economy and lives will be based on knowledge, innovation, scientific research, as well as implementing governance through the structuring of the Egyptian administrative institutions. And in line with moving to the new administrative capital, we are keeping the Egyptian peace and security as one of the main components for development, as well as sustainability of peace and stability. We translated this on the ground through a number of projects and through the National Strategic Program for Urban Development in Egypt 2050. We have included in this plan our vision for new cities to be established, networks of road infrastructure, ports, railways, land reclamation, aquaculture, all the elements of development to interpret our vision on the ground nationwide. We worked on this plan in 2 parallel directions. The first is increasing the urbanized area. We know that we have overpopulation in Egypt, so it was a must to increase the urban areas in Egypt. And in parallel to this, we are developing the existing urban areas to improve the quality of life in rural and urban areas. To attain this, we had to go through a huge volume of projects. And let me say today that we have now more than 31,000 projects that are under implementation or were implemented, and they would be finalized during the coming 3 years. The investment total cost exceeds 5.8 trillion Egyptian pounds. We have spent 3 trillion Egyptian pounds out of them up till this moment, and we have the general idea to finalize and complete these projects over the coming 3 years so that we can achieve the objective of the president that he announced. I want nothing except to have a pretty beautiful country. Let me start in brief explaining the increase of the urban areas in Egypt to assimilate the overpopulation. And this was a very important point and was raised when the country started its new mega project. There were always questions: why are you starting with these new projects? And let us first reform and renovate the existing areas and then think of future extensions. Let me say that the difficult circumstances Egypt has been through over the past 20 or 30 years, when we did not have a vision for assimilating the increase of population, and the country did not move in this direction in the right pace to assimilate the increasing housing needs, the result of which was the existing challenges we are facing now, encroachment on state lands, as well as the random building of houses. And we have not been able to overcome it over the previous years. That's why we had to move in parallel to develop a future vision for overpopulation and to implement on the ground. The more we would be able to be a step ahead, the more we would be able to avoid random construction and random expansion. And the Egyptian thinker Gamal Hamdan, in his book The Character of Egypt, شخصية مصر, he said, and I will take and quote him, construction is Egyptianization. And here, if we would go back to the word of Egypt, the word Misr or Egypt means a country. So he wanted to say that construction and urbanization constructs and develops countries. So here in this part he said that the necessity of moving people from the valley to the borders and the outskirts of the country, on top of which comes Sinai. We've started through our vision and national projects through a big number of projects, on top of which is the fourth generation cities. Egypt was one of the few countries all over the world that started the experience of establishing new cities since the 70s, and we have a pioneer experience in this field. But since 1977 up till 2014, Egypt has succeeded in implementing 24 new urban communities with the investment costs that did not exceed the 75 billion Egyptian pounds. But when we started in 2014, we were fully aware that these cities will not be sufficient to assimilate the future increase of population. That's why our vision was to establish a new generation, the fourth generation of cities, aiming at providing suitable and appropriate housing units for Egyptians. And here I'm not talking about housing, I'm talking about service areas, industrial areas, to meet the needs of the residents in these areas. Our main objective was to create millions of job opportunities, and we started this important path, constructing new cities and urbanization. We fully knew that it was easy for us to work on a fertile land with no challenges. So we started with virgin lands and virgin areas because it was easy to start projects in these areas, and through these projects we can create job opportunities. So it was one of our main objectives to expand the urban areas through the fourth generation cities. Today, we have 13 new cities that are under implementation and to be implemented over the coming 4 years. Out of them, 22 cities have started with a total investment cost over 700 billion Egyptian pounds, with the aim of assimilating the increase of population up to 30 million. This is the map showing the sites and locations of all these cities. The ones in green are the cities under implementation. The ones in yellow are the ones that we are going to start construction in the near future. These are all photos showing these cities, and this is a new shape for Egypt. And now this represents a new vision for Egypt that we can promote all over the world, how Egypt, the new strong modern state, would look like. These are examples of these projects, be it in the new administrative capital or other cities. This is realistic images. A city like New Alamein, El Galal Al Jadida. I do not want to show all the cities. These are just examples of these cities that are developing according to scientific studies and new technologies. These are all smart cities in line with the future of the whole world. We had our mega project for establishing a national network of roads, 7,000 new kilometers in addition to 5,000 kilometers that are upgraded and doubled. Today, we have reached up to 5,000 kilometers of new roads, in addition to 5,000 kilometers to be upgraded and renovated, an unprecedented network of roads that made Egypt ranked in this index 90 ranks higher over the past 5 years. These are photos of all the projects witnessed by the Egyptian citizen on the ground. For the seaports, the same applies. We have a large number of new seaports like Bernice, Gargour, Abu Qir that would be commissioned in the near future. In addition to upgrading and renovating all the existing seaports we have, so that Egypt would be a hub for international trade and would provide all services needed by Egypt. These are photos showing all these seaports. For the land dry ports, this was a field that we have not been working on before, but now in our plan we have a large number of these land ports, and we are upgrading all our crossing points and land ports in the east, west and south, so that they can be gateways for Egypt and the international trade. For the airports, they are witnessing great developments, a large volume of investments. 50 billion Egyptian pounds are invested in developing Egyptian airports and constructing new ones, so that Egypt would have the infrastructure needed for any advanced developed country. And these are all examples from these projects that were already inaugurated by the President. And here we have another very important project. Egypt has always been an agricultural state, but by time we found that the capita of agricultural land has reduced due to the increase of population that is not accompanied with increase of agricultural lands. Thus, we started our national mega projects, be it establishing 100,000 green houses, and they are over 100 million fedans. In addition to this, we are reclaiming over the coming 3 years more than 2.5 million fedans. Out of them, 700,000 fedans were always reclaimed through Mustaqbal Masr project and other projects in Toshka and other areas in North Sinai. And today we are implementing on the ground other projects in different locations, be it in El Hammam, Toshka, Sinai, or other places, so that we can reach up to this big area to meet our needs of food production. We have another mega project that was implemented according to the directives of the President, and we have been talking about it for 30 years, and it is modern irrigation systems. This year we have adopted this system, and the first 100 million fedans are using now the modern irrigation systems, and the 4 million other fedans in the old lands would be implemented within the national project for developing the Egyptian villages over the coming 3 years, and we will finalize it. This project does not only provide water for us to reclaim new lands, but it always increases the yield of the existing fedans by 30%. So we have double effects, saving of water, increasing productivity and yield, and this is for the benefit of the Egyptian farmer. The next element for our strategic plan was the urban development of the existing areas and improving the quality of living of people who live in rural and urban areas through implementing a large number of projects that are being implemented by the State of Egypt in different fields. I will give some examples. Be it housing, with our investments in housing, we reached up to 1 trillion pounds. We constructed 1 million housing units over 5 years. These 1 million housing units would be finalized during this year, 2021. And they are in different fields, social housing, alternative housing for informal settlements and unsafe areas. And this is a very distinguished project. And we are giving also housing units for the middle income families. These are a group of projects that were implemented by the state, and these are not just housing units, but these are integrated projects with all services, so that the citizen, when he resides in these areas and cities, will find all the services they need. Another project that we are proud of is the alternative housing units for unsafe and informal settlements. The President has given us directives to solve this problem for more than 1 million Egyptians, 40,000 families. So we worked on this project, and now it is the title of New Modern Egypt. And through it, we are creating a better future for our sons and daughters who used to live in these unsafe areas. And now they are going to live in safe areas, and they will be brought up in it and feel that they belong to this country. These are all photos showing these areas before and after, and we are taking people now and moving them to these new places. These are projects all over Egypt, and this is a project that the President would inaugurate by the end of March, to start evacuating all the people in unsafe areas in Giza, like those who live in the pyramids, so that they would move to these new houses, and these are the buildings and how they will look like. For water and wastewater sector, it was a sector that had a lot of problems, and up till now there is a challenge, and we will talk about this challenge when we talk about the Egyptian villages. The state of Egypt over the past 4 years was able to raise the capacity of water from 20 million cubic meters to 30 million cubic meters. So we have added 10 million cubic meters of water, and in wastewater we have a coverage of 65%, 97% for cities, and by the end of this year it would reach up to 100%, and for rural areas we've reached 38%, and God willing, through the national project for developing the Egyptian villages, we are targeting to cover the remaining part of the Egyptian villages. In the sector of transport, I here want to talk about it, and to talk about railways in particular. For the transport sector, there is always roads, collective transportation, as well as railways. We are working on two very important elements. The first is developing the existing ones, and this is happening for 9,570 kilometers of tracks of railways that are being doubled, automated, according to the modern signaling systems, and we are adding a new fleet of locomotives, engines and wagons. So we are talking about 220 billion Egyptian pounds that are spent today to upgrade this sector that all Egyptians have been complaining about. And we still think that over the coming 2 years, with the completion of all this work, we will have a decent system. This is what is happening in all the railway stations, especially the crossings that we are developing. These are the new trains and locomotives that are being commissioned now. We are producing these trains and importing some of them. We are modernizing also a Raml tram and Alexandria tram, and we are upgrading them. We are also introducing new buses, be it natural gas or electric buses. We are doing all this to develop our internal collective transportation system. We all know that we are in need for a new network to be in line with the new urban developments taking place in Egypt. That's why we had the mega project to get into the new modern area, and it is the field of smart technologies and electric technologies. We have two major projects in Greater Cairo. One is the light rail, and the other is the monorail, connecting all the suburbs in Greater Cairo. But the other very important project that the President has told us to implement is establishing a new network for railways using the electric trains, and this point was discussed. So I here want to clarify that we're talking about a new network that reaches up to 2,000 kilometers, 1,975 kilometers, with an investment cost of 350 billion Egyptian pounds. 2,000 kilometers of new railways and tracks that would be implemented to connect the old cities to the new cities, and to have a new network, and we need to have with it a new network of collective transportation. And these are in details the projects under implementation now during the first phase, with a cost of 22 billion US dollars, 350 billion Egyptian pounds. And we have also other lines that will reach up to $9 billion, and we will start implementing them in the near future. So we have a clear vision how we will add a new network of railways to serve the Egyptian citizens in the new urban cities and communities. For electricity, we had a big challenge, and thank God, with a volume of investment of 500 billion Egyptian pounds, we have now surplus in electricity, and we are able now to export electricity to the neighboring countries. And today we are discussing with all the neighboring countries and connecting with them so that Egypt would export energy to them. The field of higher education, His Excellency the President gave us directives to have a government university in each governorate, and this was already established. And the last university would be inaugurated this year in the Red Sea Governorate. And in parallel to this, we were given directives to start a new network of national and technological universities that adopt the new technologies and sciences adopted by the whole world. Now we are talking about investments made by the state in these universities. We are establishing 25 public-private universities with a cost of 150 billion pounds. In fact, a number of these universities came into service this year, like Salman, Al Jalala, Al Alamein universities, and the others would follow during the next academic year. And in the pre-university education, we established 80,000 new classrooms to assimilate the large number of students we have, and we still have big needs in this field, and the state is trying as much as it can this year to keep pace with the increase of population and establish these schools. We have introduced a number of new schools so that we can develop our governmental schools. We have the Nile schools, the Japanese schools, all these types of schools that are into service now to provide services to middle-income families that wanted their children to have education with languages. And there is high demand on all these schools, and the President gave us directives to expand further in these types of schools. In the field of education, we have done a lot. So next comes health. There is the initiative of 100 million health. The waiting lists has come to an end. The initiative of health of women, as well as the detection of diseases for students in schools and universities, the universal health insurance system. According to the law, it should have been done in 15 years, but we are trying as much as we can to reduce this period to 10 years rather than 15 years, so that this universal health insurance system would cover all Egyptians. Although the experiences of the world says that such things are very complicated, yet we are following a scientific methodology to be able to cover all the Egyptian citizens. This is an image that shows our new hospitals, the initiatives that are being implemented now nationwide and contributed to avoiding the repercussions and the ramifications of COVID-19, especially on the Egyptians who have chronic diseases. And this had a very positive effect. There are a lot of social initiatives adopted by the state through the line ministries and civil society organizations and Long Live Egypt Fund, Takaful and Karama project. Through this project, we are reaching out to 4 million Egyptian families. Before getting into this important project, the development of Egyptian villages, the President gave us directives also to start implementing 1 million housing units, additional ones, so that we can try as much as we can to prevent or limit random construction. He gave us directives to start working in all the existing cities. I'm not talking now about new cities, I'm talking about the old existing cities. So we'll start the construction in them and develop the informal settlements and the unplanned areas and provide the alternative housing units to the Egyptians so that they would find their needs rather than encroaching on the agricultural lands or the state lands. So this project is divided into two parts. One for 500,000 housing units with an investment cost of 250 billion pounds, and they are in the existing cities to develop not only the unsafe areas but also the unplanned areas, so that we can remove some of these areas and reconstruct them once more and provide decent housing units to the Egyptians in these areas and change the shape of the Egyptian cities and urban communities that we have suffered from over the previous decades. These are sites and locations where we have allocated large plots of lands for this project, and according to your directives, in cooperation with the National Engineering Authority of the Armed Forces, we are going to implement it within 3 years. We have started the implementation of 1,000 housing units. This project started last month, and the sites were received by the engineering authority for 77,000 units, and we will introduce the rest of the lands to establish 500,000 housing units. This map shows the plan for Suez, Governorate, Ras El Barra, and this is how the buildings would look like. Very modern urban buildings, and we are implementing housing units for all social classes. In the new cities, you gave us directives to establish 500,000 new housing units in addition to the ones that are under construction now. As we said, it is easier to start in new locations, so we started constructing them, and this is some of the locations we've started in now in Sadat City. These are all images showing the new buildings, and these are all areas that are under construction in very few months. And these housing units would be made available for all social classes. I will wrap up with the project we are talking about today and we are launching today. It is the national project for upgrading Egyptian villages. This is part of your initiative for a decent life. This project could never have started except after we paved the way for this project. For us to go to all Egyptian villages, renovate and upgrade them, we needed first to finish the infrastructure networks to upgrade and develop these villages. So the infrastructure needed, the volume of works to be done needed us to pave the way through a number of projects that were implemented over the previous years so that we can start this mega project that would affect the life of 85 million Egyptians. You gave us directives to start this project in 2019 and to start with a group of villages, the most poorest villages and the least developed villages. And we tried to look at these poorest and least developed villages. But you gave us directives that the state would mobilize its resources and work with the civil society and the private sector to implement such a project. As this project is targeting, as we said, 58 million Egyptians, 84 villages and satellite villages. The estimated cost is 515 billion Egyptian pounds. For this project, we are talking about full interventions for the Egyptian villages, including all aspects of services, infrastructure, social elements, creating job opportunities for the Egyptians in the rural areas. In this mega project, we have with us all the line ministers, along with tens of civil society organizations, Long Live Egypt Fund, the private sector, through a number of initiatives that are under implementation. During the first phase, when the president gave us directives to start in 2019, we started with 375 rural complexes that have 4.5 million Egyptians with a cost of 13 billion pounds, 2,180 projects. They were divided over 143 complexes we'll start with, and in the fiscal year 2021 we will start with the others. These are the sites of the 143 residential villages we started with, and we finished all their projects with the exception of wastewater projects that are under completion during the first half of this year, and they would be completed fully. And in parallel, we started with the 232 other complexes, and according to the implementation rates, we have achieved 55% for the 232 complexes, and we are targeting by the end of 2021 to finalize them. The total projects in the 375, we're talking about a very important initiative where we get in and upgrade and renovate the old houses. We're talking about more than 58 million houses that are being renovated and inaugurated. We demolish some of them and reconstruct them. Others are being renovated. We provided them with water, wastewater. We are doing huge work in these villages. We are upgrading 313 health clinics, and we are also renovating the roads in these villages, in addition to improving the electricity networks, improving the water services, as well as providing these villages with wastewater services. These are photos showing the changes during phase one, how the house looked like before and how it looks like now. As you can see here on the right hand side, there was no ceiling, and we have constructed a ceiling, and we have constructed the houses according to the patterns they have in these areas. This is an internal photo of the house, and we are also renovating all the schools, the hospitals, the clinics in these villages. You can see here photos of classrooms that were developed, and for also the clinics we are upgrading them. Playgrounds are added in the youth centers to serve people in these villages. The veterinary units are provided now with the modern equipments to serve the animal production there. For the roads network, they used to complain about them. So now we are connecting all these complexes and villages to each other so that they can have easy movement. For wastewater, this is one of their main demands. And for this component, the share is 60% of the investment cost, if you're talking about 500 billion pounds used by the state. For the rest of the villages, at least 50 or 60% of them would be used for wastewater. These are photos of the projects in the villages. We are also developing the wells existing there, and for the gas networks, we are developing them, and the President gave us directives to introduce also natural gas connections to these villages whenever it is possible, to reduce the burden shouldered by our people in these areas, lining the lakes. This is another major project. We started in phase 1 with 7,000 kilometers of lakes and drainages to be lined over 2 years. So in year 1, we reached 40 or 50% of our target, and according to the directives of the President, we need to expand and to implement over the coming 3 years the whole network of lakes and drainages with a length of 20,000 kilometers. God willing, the state over the coming 3 years will upgrade them and line all these lakes and drainages, as the objective of this project is to be able to take water to the end of these canals and lakes, and this would make them save water, because you can see how the canals and the lakes looked like before, stagnant water. So that's why a large part of this water was wasted due to that. These are examples of the projects under implementation, the social initiatives implemented by the state through training on handicrafts, and the Small and Medium Enterprises Authority has a number of initiatives, like the initiative Jam'iyati for microfinancing, as well as opening supply units to provide commodities and goods to Egyptians everywhere. There are also health convoys that are sent to all these villages, and according to the directives of His Excellency the President, we started the second phase of this project. For the second phase, to implement real integrated development in the villages, the philosophy has changed. Instead of targeting individual villages in rural areas, we are targeting now the whole area to upgrade and renovate all the villages in these centers. So we are developing villages and satellite villages instead of working on 2 or 3 villages. Because these are considered to be the poorest villages, now we will take the whole area, develop all the villages, and then move on to the next one. And this would be done over the coming 3 years. Our target through this project that we will launch today is to upgrade 4,209 Egyptian villages. The number of beneficiaries, 50 million citizens, the cost 500 billion pounds. For this project, with all its complications and the funding needed, the plan was to implement it over 10 years. Every year we take a specific number with a cost of 50 billion. But because we are all keen of improving the quality of life in the rural villages, so the President gave us directives to implement this project over 3 years. To be honest, it is not a matter of financing and funding. The challenge, to be honest and transparent with you, that we face is not financing. The financing is available, but it lies in the number of projects that would be implementing in parallel, and our capabilities and the capability of the construction sector and the services sector to meet these needs, especially that we are encouraging national industry. So all the supplies for the electricity projects, roads projects, wastewater projects would be taken from local products and national plans to encourage our factories to double their production. And for this, we would create hundreds and thousands of job opportunities for the residents in these villages, because those who would implement these projects, if this would be by construction major companies, then they would depend on the local workers in these villages. So by doing so, we are improving the income of the residents in these villages. This large number of villages would be divided over 175 centers. We will start with 50 first, and then over the next 2 years we'll continue the rest 125. For us to select the first 50, I here need to clarify that, of course, the members of the parliament and the citizens want us to start with their centers. So I want to say that we would cover all of them. But when we came to select the first 50, we selected them according to scientific standards. And we wanted to be in the largest number of governorates. If we've depended only on the poverty index, we would have worked in 10 governorates only, but to reach 20 governorates, we have covered other indicators. So now we have 1,400 villages that would be covered over the next year, 18 million citizens with a total cost of 150 billion. So the center would averagely take 3 billion Egyptian pounds of integrated projects to upgrade it. This is how they look like as the poverty rates. We find that most of them has a poverty average of 50%, some has 20%, and others reach up to 70%. Even these are the names of these centers, over 20 governorates, 1,400 villages, as I said. We're talking about full interventions, service infrastructure projects. All the services that you can see here on the screen would be implemented: economic development, creating job opportunities, social interventions, providing decent houses. Interventions would be done by all the institutions and the ministries. Here you can see on this table some of these centers. In Qina Governorate, for example, we have 4: El Waqf, Dishna, Abu Tisht, and Farshoot, with approximately a cost of 6.2 billion pounds for 62 villages and 501 satellites. In Suhag, 7 centers with a cost 15 billion Egyptian pounds. In El Bihira, 6 centers, 20 billion Egyptian pounds that would be spent. Asyut, 7 centers, 13 billion Egyptian pounds, and so on. I will show you the details. This is example of one center, Sahel Selim in Asyut Governorate. We have here confined all the assets there, and the entities that would implement this project for the 50 centers. We are doing elements for all the projects that would be implemented in each one of them, and we put an action plan and implementation program so we can follow up the implementation of these projects and make sure that they would be implemented. Interventions in everything, even providing services like the dairy collection complexes, the lining of ponds and lakes. The farmer needs all these services in these villages. And this is how the projects would look like. And by this, we are changing these areas. As we said, we're talking about 58 million Egyptians who would be covered by this project. We have dreamt of improving their standards of living, changing everything they have into a more civilized areas. As for the lining of the lakes, the president said that we should not leave even the 2 sides of the lakes and the canals to prevent people from encroaching on them afterwards, and we gave directives to all the governors along with the ministers to do this. His Excellency, the President, distinguished guests, this project is a very important project, and of course we are all working on it so that the Egyptian citizen who has endured the bill of the economic reform to start today to feel over the coming years that he is reaping the fruits of this economic reform. Thank God, with the very difficult conditions we have faced due to COVID-19 and the whole world is suffering, yet we were capable of having resilience, and our economy was one of the few economies all over the world that was able to enjoy resilience and to have positive growth rates, and these are all the results of this economic reform. And the President is always giving us directives so that over the coming 2 or 3 years we would reach out to the largest number of Egyptians with development projects that would improve the standard of living for them. This project, despite the huge challenges it faces, would be a dream that we would all make true. I will wrap up by quoting the President. We are still facing challenges, and the state has been suffering over the past 50 years. We acknowledge and realize these challenges, and everything that we are doing is just a step out of a 1,000 steps journey to develop and construct Egypt. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. Would you please be seated? In the name of God. As we saw today in this presentation delivered by the Prime Minister to emphasize the efforts and the ideas we have to achieve progress every day, thanks to God. I won't be lengthy to give the opportunity to the rest of the proceedings of this event. I will start with the last project Dr. Mustafa talked about, and it is the 1,500 villages during the first phase. We will go to centers in the governorates with all the villages and the satellites, so that when we leave it would be nothing missing. Everything would be already done and implemented. So it is not just the Urban Community Authority and the Ministry of Electricity that would work on it. I think we need to mobilize all our efforts and resources, not only in the government and the civil society, but I mean even the Egyptians. In the villages we will work we will leave them after turning them into something totally different. What do I mean? We will have wastewater, full coverage, yes, a roads network, taking into consideration when we talked about the community dialogue, they said that you are not going to pave every part. So you need to leave areas for the livestock and the animals to be able to move freely without having any broken limb. So at least for the corridors connecting the villages to each other, they would already be paved. So it's electricity, wastewater, water. We're talking about all the government buildings would be upgraded and renovated, be it a hospital, a clinic, a school, along with the rest of the services. Would this provide job opportunities to the local contractors? Yes, of course. The local and national contractors in these centers would have an opportunity to work with us on these projects, no doubt. the national industry would benefit, and this is something that we have taken into consideration in the framework of encouraging and improving the national industry and supporting the Egyptian economy. We say that those who produce, for example, electricity cables, we will contract you, and the same applies to the electricity transformers. Everything that can be produced, Dr. Shakir, we agreed on this. We said that we have known the volume of the demand we will send to these factories, and we will talk to these factories, tell them we're talking about a project in all sectors, and it would need millions of pounds, and we want to contract you. So it is the government that would contract them at a central level through a standard procurement method for all the supplies needed to upgrade these villages. And we'll pay good advance payments to show our seriousness as a government to implement the project, as well as give the opportunity to the companies and the factories, if they want to develop their production lines or to increase their production capacities, they can do it through pumping direct funds. I have a contract for 5 or 6 billion Egyptian pounds with you for electricity cables and transformers. He will take 1 billion Egyptian pounds, for example, to improve his capacities, production lines, for a better production, and to be ready to give us this product that we need. The same applies to anything else. As Dr. Mustafa said, the biggest number that would be allocated for a project is the one that would be allocated for wastewater projects, because it does not apply only to the pipelines inside the villages, but it is also the plants that would collect the wastewater and treat it, be it secondary or tertiary treatment according to what is needed. And there can be no wastewater that would be dumped in lakes or canals afterwards. So, God willing, we will get into the villages over these 3 years and leave them totally different. Something else. A different Egypt. And as it is said, we are always planning for what we do, so we are following a plan. For example, the first problem people had was the electricity outcuts. So can we start working on a sector when we have a problem with infrastructure? We could have never done that before. So it was a must to have a balanced plan. We are not going to ignore any sector, but we will focus first on a certain sector, finish it, and then move on to the next. You will find that for every sector to develop it, the cost exceeds 1 trillion Egyptian pounds. To upgrade the electricity sector, we had a problem with all sectors, to be honest. We had a problem in Egypt with all sectors. And everyone said no one would be able to deal with all these difficulties and challenges. But God willing, we were able to do it. God supported us, and you, the Egyptians, did it, and not only the government. What is done in Egypt, if it is done with non-Egyptian companies, then the cost would have been tenfold more than the existing cost. I would say, for example, the cost of this project would be 1 billion Egyptian pounds. If it is a non-Egyptian company, then the cost would be $1 billion rather than 1 billion Egyptian pounds. So we did not leave a sector neglected, and it was a must to work on all these sectors. In the year 2015 and 2016, we could have never left the electricity network as the problem it has. The factories were unable to operate, and people used to say, we have a problem. The hospitals complained with the incubators that were never able to operate. So today things are different. We have now surplus of electricity for us to export to the neighboring countries. So we are talking about energy sector. It is electricity and natural gas, and we covered these two parts first. And we started improving this sector. First, we overcame the problem. Dr. Shekhar, we first solved the problem we had, and then we started improving this sector. We started working on the smart grid. By this, we are moving to the international standards. We do not talk about illusions. We know nothing about illusions. We are always trying to be realistic and honest to ourselves and to you. After we solve these problems, we can start now improving things. But the biggest volume of cost was used for overcoming the problem. The same applies to railways. I'm following up the discussions taking place, and we accept the discussions and respect them. But I would like to add something. For railways, we have 10,000 kilometers. They are 9.5 thousand. Let them be 10,000. How did this sector look like? It had a problem. Did we leave it? No. We started working on it. We are upgrading the tracks, electricating and automating the tracks, renovating the stations, and we're developing also the equipments, the locomotives, the engines, the wagons and the trains. And I talked to Kamel El-Wazir and told him that we won't have any old train on the track. But due to COVID-19, we were unable to do it this year, so we'll postpone it till the end of this year. By the end of 2021, this would be done, isn't it, Kamel? And hold us accountable to that. You won't find one old train on the track by the end of this year. By December 2021, God willing, we won't have one old train on the 10,000 kilometer tracks. This is what we wanted to say. This is a very big investment cost that was allocated for this project to have new trains so that we can also renovate the older ones, double the tracks and upgrade them. So we have an objective that railways that contributes to the mobility of commodities and individuals and passengers would be in an integrated best form by the end of this year, 2021. By the end of this year, we will have upgraded the old tracks and we won't have one old train. So this is exactly what we are working on, in addition, of course, to upgrading the stations. I did not want to interrupt the Prime Minister. He showed us a map with the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea, and seaports over both seas. Do we think that our reality we have with the 10,000 kilometers is the best thing? How we kept on with these roads and networks that were there with a level of production, a level of trade for 80 years? Was it 80 years? 85 years, let's call it 80 years.
احنا ما عملناش
Over 80 years, we have added nothing to the ports we have and the networks. So let's start.
نوصل زي ما اتفقنا ان احنا نحل المشكله
As we said, we are solving the problem,
ثم من الخط ده ندافع
and then after solving the problem, we start development and upgrading.
مبني على ان انا هوا حد يعني مش بمزاجي
And this should not be based on the whims of anyone, but it should be based on science,
مبررات حقيقيه
studies, real justifications.
يا جماعه ده
So I wanted to say that سخنة,
او نختزل الموضوع كلنا لان هو ان احنا اصلا
let's say that the objective is not the administrative capital. We want people to move from Sokhna port to Alexandria port and Gargoub port before El Barani and El Saloum. 40 kilometers west Matruh.
يعني بيني وبين خط الحدود مع
So between me and the borders with Libya, Gargoub port, we can call it a different name.
المهم لغايه المينا ده احنا
So up till this port,
على قد ايه من السخنه للعالمين
from Sokhna to El Alamein,
العاصمه الاداريه الجديده
from Sokhna to the new administrative capital, then the 6th of October, then Alexandria, then El Alamein, then Matruh and Gargoub.
بنتكلم قبل كده بنقول ان احنا
In the past,
احنا يعني المصريين عايشين على 4%
we used to say that we, the Egyptians, live on 4 or 5% of the surface area of Egypt. If we want to reach 7 or 8 or 9%, how we would do it without doing these things? These are things to be implemented on the ground, and then you will see it.
قد نقدر نشرحه
And then we might explain it
معانا واحنا بنقدر نشرحه
to you if the media would provide coverage,
مقدره ان واثقه فينا ان احنا
or people would have confidence in our ability to plan and implement our plans.
بنتكلم من اكتوبر
We are talking about another also monorail from October till Aswan.
لما انا اروح الصعيد
So when I go to Upper Egypt
بعمله
in a short period,
لمصر
I'm doing this for whom? I'm doing this for all Egyptians who are on this line. Instead of spending overnight in the train, they would go easily in a faster, quicker time. So I'm not leaving the existing ones, we are developing them and we are building new ones because we are building a new state. This train, how many hours would it take? 4 hours? It would take 4 hours from October to Aswan.
طب حد يقول لي يا فندم انت يعني طب
Would you please be seated, Kamel?
حد يقول لي طب انت التكلفه الماليه
Someone would ask me about the cost.
احنا ما فيش اجراء مالي
There is no financial procedure or decision that is made except with the presence of a Supreme Committee in the cabinet that discusses each loan we will take.
مفيش حاجه بتتعمل كده
Nothing is done haphazardly.
كل الكلام دوت في برلمان
And there is also a parliament that holds us and this committee accountable. And what does this number represent in our growth rates? So we cannot exceed certain things.
الاقي فرصه كويسه
When I find a good opportunity, won't I seize it?
انا بتكلم على السكه الحديد لسه
I'm talking still about the railways.
بتكلم على السكه الحديد لسه كان المشروع ولا ما اقولش الكلام ده كده
Shouldn't I say that, Kamel?
ولا ما اقولوش
It's important to be said so that people would
المشروع
know.
بتاع السخنه
السخنة,
الاسكندريه
Alexandria, El Alamein
تقدموا
project,
من غير ما اقول اسماء
without mentioning names, I will give just figures.
رقم ب 19.5
We
مليار
received 19.5 billion US dollars and 10 billion US dollars offers.
الفريق كامل يا فندم احنا عندنا
And Minister Kamel told me we have two alliances
عملوا المشروع بتاع
who would implement السخنة.
العاصمه
The administrative capital October العالمين Alexandria.
حد قال 19
Someone said 19 and someone said 10.
نقصات.
The two alliances gave these two offers
فبيقول لي
in a bid.
لا طبعا مش هعمل
So I told him, no,
الثمن ده.
we won't do it at this cost.
الموضوع ده احنا ندفع فيه الرقم.
We said we will pay that much for this project. Didn't I do that?
ده صحيح.
Yes.
واللي قلناه الرقم يا دكتور مصطفى مش كده؟
And
بفضل الله
thank
سبحانه وتعالى
God brought us the figure we mentioned.
انا بتكلم على خط ايه؟ 450 كيلو بس.
I'm talking about only 450 kilometers.
على 450 كيلو بس. ما هو سكه بقى حديثه
New tracks,
عربيات كهرباء حديثه قوي.
new electric trains and wagons. So a qualitative leap in the field of transport.
احنا بنتكلم 2000 كيلو بقى اللي
For the 2000 kilometers Dr. Mustafa mentioned, we're talking about 10 for 450. Now we're talking about 2000 multiplied by 350 billion. These are the new prices with the Egyptian companies and the foreign companies that implement a small part of it. So what we said here is that we'll do everything we can with the Egyptian construction companies, the tracks, the stations to be constructed, the sleepers to be put. We were able to do a large part of the project thanks to our Egyptian companies.
في شركات في مصر كتير.
We have now in Egypt a lot of companies
شركات في مصر كتير نمت وكبرت.
that grew and developed through the projects we implemented over the past 6 or 7 years. And we're still working.
المهم انا عايز اقول
So I want to say,
الخطوط الحديد
getting back to railways, that this is not a luxury, it's a goal.
الدول بتقاس
Countries
مقياس اسمه او مقاييس اسمها قوة الدولة.
I measured according to the comprehensive powers of the state, which is the population, the territories, the armed forces, the infrastructure. Of course, they say the infrastructure of this country is as such, and we are not doing it so that they would say Egypt is good. No. We are doing this for our people, for our country, and not for others to say you are here or there. I want people to understand this idea.
وانا بسمع برضو يقول لك طب فين التعليم؟
I hear people asking about education. We left nothing. We are covered education, public education, university education. We are working on everything.
والتعليم انا اقول لكم
When you ask me about education, I will ask you, what about family planning?
مش كده؟ ولا انتوا تعملوا اللي انتوا عايزينه؟
Or would you do whatever you want and tell me solve this problem? As you ask me about education, then I should ask you about family planning, because we are working on all our problems in parallel to each other to achieve all our objectives. We cannot leave a sector and forget about it and focus on others.
بالمناسبة انتوا مش هتستحملوا.
And you won't bear that. If I would focus on education and leave other sectors, you would not bear this. People want to live. People want to find a job opportunity, want to live. Would we spend all our resources on education only? This is something that can be done in other countries, but not in Egypt.
يعني احنا شغالين في كل القطاعات.
So we are working in all sectors. So if you would ask me for something, I would tell you, please,
النمو السكاني اخباره ايه؟
what about family planning?
يعني انا بقوله دلوقتي عشان اضايقكم يعني ولا حاجه؟ لا يعني
Am I saying this only
كلنا
to disturb you, but I'm telling you because we need to work on all things and issues in parallel.
دي قضيه كبيره برضه.
And family planning is a big issue.
كل الجهد
I should not say that, but this main issue and overpopulation does not make you feel all the accomplishments and all the achievements done with the support of God. You always ask about how much money you will earn. I want, of course, to improve the standard of living and the incomes of all citizens. But overpopulation is not giving us this opportunity to feel the changes. And as the Prime Minister said in the previous meeting, when we talked about the chronological developments of the Egyptians and Egypt over the past 150 years, we found that we are not witnessing the achievements, accomplishments because of overpopulation that is increasing the whole time and causing imbalance. You had 4 million citizens and you had 4 million fiddans. One fiddan for each citizen. Now you have 100 million citizens and you do not have the 100 million fiddans. This affects, of course, the wealth of the state, the wealth of the individuals in the state, the prices of food products. You're talking about 8 or 9 or 10 even million fiddans. Instead of 1 fiddan for each citizen, we have 10 citizens per fiddan. I do not want to be lengthy. I just want to say that you should be reassured because we are transparent. We discuss with you everything, and our inaugurations is an opportunity for us to talk to you and talk about the accomplishments so that you would realize what's going on. I will give one last example for the project that would be inaugurated today and the project that would be launched today, the project of the villages. You are all invited. All the executives in the governorates are invited. I know that you have 24 for the Urban Community Authority and 26 for the Engineering Authority and the Armed Forces. So all the commanders, all the engineering units and divisions in these centers are responsible along with us. Why? Because as we show the people the lake and the canal and how it looked like when it was lined, some people might dump waste in this lined lake and canal if we do not look after it and if we do not protect what we done. And this should never happen. We did this for a lot of reasons, one of which is that no waste would be dumped in them. For the 1,500 villages or the 4,500 villages would be upgraded and renovated over 3 years in a form that we will all be proud of. And by doing this, we would solve the problem of rural areas in Egypt. And then after solving the problem, what will we do for any other encroachment? There are 11,000 satellite villages. What do we mean? I wish that whether you live in the city or the capital or in the villages, to be aware of what I'm saying. I said 1,500 villages with the 11,000 satellite villages. What do I mean by satellites? 25 houses over here, 50 houses over there. So if this was planned in the past, I wouldn't have this problem of trying to find a solution with these satellites. The wastewater network would have been one that served all this. We might find other solutions for these satellites. Maybe I cannot extend the wastewater network to these satellites. Maybe we'll find other solutions for them. We'll try to solve it as much as we can. During the coming 3 years, we will solve all the problems of villages. There would be electricity, wastewater services. If the electricity lines, for example, are passing over a house, we will remove them then. Although you have built wrongly this house, then we are going to remove it yet and make it a ground network. Next Tuesday, we have a meeting with Dr. Asim al-Gazzar and General Ihab to look at the number of transformers, cables that we need and their prices. Thank you, Dr. Shekhar. We are not saying that those people who wrongly built under the electricity lines, what we'll do to them. We said, okay, we'll bear this cost and we will remove them from above the houses. And there is something that I did not mention with the Prime Minister. What about the spaces inside the village? If we find, for example, 10 pieces of land in this village, can we build them and then see how we are going to deal with them? So once more, I would like to say, please let's all work together. We, the government, the people, the civil society, the officials, even the police. The mayor, for example, in any police station knows more about this village than us, so they should be there with us. All the ministers should work with us and mobilize efforts and resources. And also the young people in each village should be there standing by our side when we are doing this. Be seated, please. God willing, we will launch this project. We have announced it today, and we will start with 2 centers, as Dr. Mustafa said. This month, I mean by this month, January, but for launching the whole project, it would be by next month. I will find the Engineering Authority and the Urban Communities Authority working with the equipments and the tools. And I wish that the competition between the Urban Communities Authority and the Engineering Authority in the Armed Forces would enable us to see 26 centers upgraded and developed by the book. And Dr. Mustafa would be responsible for the other 24 ones. Congratulations. Thank God. And may God support us with you, your efforts, your patience. And God willing, we will do more better things in this field. We are one of the countries that astonished the world with the COVID-19. Don't be astonished. This is due to the support of God, and may God always support us and not punish us. Thank you very much. Excellency President, we'll take a 15 minutes break.
قالوا لي ارسم علمها سرحت وتخيلت قصر عليه حراس كتيرة في وسطهم خط ونسر تحيا مصر تحيا وعيونها تملي صاحية وعيونها في كل ناحية وفي مليون اتجاه تحيا مصر حرة تحيا ألف مرة تحيا مهما يجرى لنهاية الحياة.
نرحب بكم مشاهدينا، وهذا اللقاء مع السيد القصير وزير الزراعة واستصلاح الأراضي.
Welcome dear viewers with this interview
الوزير، يعني إلى أي مدى تشكل هذه المشروعات
with Mr. Sayed Al-Qasir. We're talking here about the animal wealth, and all these projects that are being implemented is a main pivot to improve the food security in Egypt. Let us be honored of the inauguration of this project today. You know that food security was a priority for the President, and the agriculture sector and livestock, be it poultry production, animal production or fish production, has witnessed support from the President over the previous 6 years. Food security. Let's talk about COVID-19. COVID-19 proved that these sectors, poultry production, animal production, fish production, are essential sectors that were resilient enough to provide healthy food to the Egyptians. The conditions that we have been through were difficult, and we found a lot of countries that were unable to meet the needs of its people. And thanks to the President and the national mega projects in the field of agriculture, animal production, fish production, I think that all Egyptians during this period found that all food products are available at affordable, balanced prices. So the concern of the President with these projects is to improve food security. This project, El Fayrouz project for aquaculture, is over 26,000 fidans implemented by the national company in cooperation with Suez Canal Authority and other entities. It is a project that is targeting the production of 13,000 tons of fish, and we have 2 lakes, 6,000 tanks, over 15,000 fidans, in addition to 2 lakes, over 10,000 fidans. An integrated project that has tanks for aquaculture and new technologies to maximize production depending on the sea water, so pure fish with distinguished production. And in this project, as I said, there are 2 lakes, over 10,000 fidans that are used for free fishing, as you can see. And this project also has a fodder plant, another one for ice. And for the first time, a fishing boats fleet. And you can see 34 boats that are ready now to fish in our territorial water, in addition to another project that would be inaugurated right now by the President, and Isidziba triangle for production of shrimps. In addition to the project in Sharq al-Tafri'a, Ghalioun Lake, all these projects aim at increasing the production of fish in Egypt. Thank God, the total production of fish in Egypt right now is 2 million tons. And we have reached more than 85% self-sufficiency rate. In addition to these projects, Egypt would be able to cover its needs of food security, and there would be opportunities to export, especially after the efforts exerted by the President by giving directives to all entities to develop the lakes so that they would get back to normal and increase the fish production. These are all integrated projects that would target in the end food security. Mr. Minister, some look at the countries that has an opportunity in fishing like Norway, Sweden or UK. They depend on free fishing. What about aquaculture and its scientific importance? And is there a difference between this and that? Yes, of course. Aquaculture using new technologies, as we can see, led to increasing production of fisheries in Egypt. As we said, we produce 2 million tons of fish. 1.6 million come from aquaculture and fisheries. And now we are ranked first at the African level and the 6th internationally in the field of aquaculture. And we are ranked the 3rd in the production of tilapia. With the introduction of these projects with their full capacity, we are achieving self-sufficiency, opportunities for exportation, providing high-quality fish for the Egyptian citizen, along with the changing the taste of the Egyptians to reduce meat consumption. And one of the projects that the President would inaugurate today is 2 projects in Nubaria and Fayoum with a capacity of 15,000 livestock. And this would increase the amount of meat and increase the animal production. And we have another project for dairy production that would increase the amount of dairy we have, as we are achieving self-sufficiency in dairy products. And we are meeting the needs of the factories that produce dairy products. These are all projects that are targeting food security. Mr. Said Al-Qasir, the Minister of Agriculture and Land Reclamation, thank you for this interview.
هي دايما بتنادينا مصر أغلى من الحياة أرضها سر الوجود وإحنا عايشين نبني فيها تحيا مصر بأعلى صوت من البحيرة للصعيدة وأهلنا في أرض العريش عيشوا ملح ولما نفطر بالفطر وهي القريش زي مصر وزي ناسها طبعهم لما تلاقيش من البحيرة للصعيدة وأهلنا في أرض العريش عيشوا ملح ولما نفطر
من لا يملك قوت يومه لا يملك قراره، لذا انطلقت مصر بخطى ثابتة في مشروعها لرفع مستوى الأمن الغذائي
Egypt is trying to raise the level of food security through developing the agriculture sector as well as increasing the animal and poultry production in addition to developing its fish wealth. Egypt, when it's looking for the components of its development at this critical moment, is working on direct development as well as sustainable development through El Fairuz aquaculture project. It is part of achieving the concepts of sustainable development according to international standards. Let's put a title here, and it is the blue economy. A blue economy is a term that is used to talk about all economic elements related to water, seas and oceans. COVID-19 had an effect on the whole world since WHO announced this pandemic. This showed the future vision of Egypt through working on a number of projects described as major projects in the field of food security. And the most recent report issued by FAO for the year 2020 talking about the effect of COVID-19 on food security showed that Egypt, with its food supply, enabled to protect its local markets, and this helped Egypt getting through these difficult moments steadily. The report also showed that Egypt took very important measures to have reserves of the strategic commodities, and this saved the local markets from the problems of supplying them. In a report issued by the Fish Wealth Authority, we found that 80% of fish production in Egypt comes from aquaculture and fisheries, and 20% from the natural fisheries. So we are adding components to this system through this new project that would produce more tons of fish every year with an economic return, and would provide also this protein needed by the citizens. Now we are in Port Said Governorate in Sharq al-Tafri'a that was given concern by the political leadership, and the government and the president over the previous years. The first digital smart city in Egypt, the first city that applies the universal health coverage. This governorate that witnessed the addition of new platforms to Port Said seaport, in addition to new tunnels below Suez Canal to reduce the distance between Sinai Peninsula and the other part of the valley. So it's a great development that is witnessed by Port Said Governorate and Egypt. The veins of development on the land of Port Said is integrated with the developments taking place in other canal governorates to develop the area from Peninsula of Sinai up till the Suez Canal. And this is an area that has a lot of economic and logistical capabilities that can make it a pioneer area, as the old Suez Canal was. The new Suez Canal is, with these new projects complementing it so that it can be a hub of development. Egypt selected to fight terrorism not only through security measures, but it selected also development as a tool to fight extremism.